Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX Eurozone, and here are the headlines. Russia says that its forces have blocked Ukrainian breakouts in Pokrovsk and are advancing towards the north. They're continuing to destroy Ukrainian units near Kupiansk, urging trapped troops to surrender. Kremlin has meanwhile dismissed claims of minimal Russian presence in the area. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has welcomed the EU Enlargement Committee's annual report, calling it Ukraine's best in 3 years. He's highlighted military successes, continued EU membership progress, and EU financial support exceeding 1.8 billion euros. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that Iran has freed 2 French nationals after more than 3 years in detention. Bear was detained since 2022 on espionage-related charges, and France called these unfounded. They've now been released on bail. A UPS cargo plane has crashed during takeoff at Louisville International Airport, sparking massive fire. 7 deaths have been confirmed, with 11 injured and several missing. 3 crew members still remain unaccounted for. A deadly fire has torn through a nursing home in Tuzla in northern Bosnia, killing 11 and injuring several firefighters. Rescue work is currently underway. Trapped elderly residents are being rescued and survivors are being treated for carbon monoxide poisoning. According to Syrian state media, Syrian Foreign Minister Assad Hassan al-Shibani has met with the Middle East Institute President Ambassador Stuart Jones in Damascus to discuss regional developments and Syrian-American relations. The talks focused on enhancing bilateral dialogue, boosting cooperation, and lifting the Caesar Act sanctions. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has confirmed that the U.S. military has killed 2 suspected drug smugglers in the Eastern Pacific. This marks the 16th such strike since September, raising the overall death toll to at least 67 in the Caribbean and Pacific operations. The death toll from Typhoon Kalmegi has risen to at least 90 in the Philippines, with the Cebu province worst hit. Floods have taken place and wind speeds up to 80 miles per hour have been recorded. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Russia has now stated that its forces have blocked multiple Ukrainian attempts to break out of the encirclement in Pokrovsk, and that its troops in the region are advancing northwards. Russia has also stated that its forces continue destroying Ukrainian units near Kupiansk, and that the Ukrainian troops in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk should surrender. The Russian Defense Ministry had earlier dismissed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's recent claim that only 60 Russian soldiers were present in Kupiansk. The ministry has stated that Ukrainian units were trapped in cauldrons and had no escape except voluntary surrender. Meanwhile, oil pumping stations have been slightly damaged in a Ukrainian drone attack on oil refineries in the Yaroslav region. Joining us on the broadcast is Major General Sudhakarji, Senior Geopolitical and Strategic Expert from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you, of course, the Russians are claiming that they're making big gains on the ground in the front lines. Ukraine has stated that it's holding on to its defenses. As a military man, how do you assess the situation on the ground?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. My take on the whole issue is that the ongoing conflict has picked up momentum in favor of Russia. It's making very deep and decisive advance towards the north from Donetsk Oblast. So when I say north, to my assessment, they're heading towards Kharkiv area. that would actually cut off Ukrainian forces onto the eastern side of Dnieper, which is going to give a severe jolt to the Ukraine forces. Many of them will be surrounded or encircled and may be subjected to attrition, military attrition. These are very dangerous turn of events. To me, it appears that suddenly the offensive has gained momentum in favor of Russia for whatever the reason may be, because the geopolitical dynamics are ever evolving and flip-flopping as far as the Western alliances are concerned. There is no coherence, there is no strategy to suggest that they're heading for some kind of a ceasefire. Instead, on the contrary, it appears that the fire is actually intensifying and making disastrous kind of consequences for Ukrainian forces. Back to you, Pia.
Indeed, you've stated that there seems to be no indication of a ceasefire. There were murmurs. There was Donald Trump, who himself, in fact, came out and stated that a meeting was supposed to take place in Budapest. That did not happen after Russia sent a memo to Washington. There was a lot of criticism, of course, from EU nations that came out and basically highlighted that any talks between the Americans and the Russians should involve Ukraine as well on the negotiating table. Considering we're not seeing this, we're seeing something totally different. As you pointed out, the situation has been escalating even further. Winter is around the corner. How do you think both countries, especially the people of both countries, will then now have to gear up, considering the attacks have been pointed towards energy infrastructure and power grids?
Yeah, the question which you have raised has got multiple components. The first and foremost part is, what is it that the Russians are aiming for? To me, it appears that they are aiming for that piece of ground which Ukrainians were actually holding till now, and Russians have been bidding for that, for the final stage of negotiations or some kind of a ceasefire to bring the conflicts to an end. Since no ceasefire, no headway has been made so far, somehow the Russians, they have managed to overcome the resistance and been able to capitulate that piece of ground, which will give them further or distinct launch pad to capture such a junction or a pivotal point, which will give them multiple directions to progress their operations should the case arise in future. This is one. Second, you also raised the point regarding the timing. This is the early part of November. Winter has already set in. It's freezing cold. As they go into December and January, it will be very, very difficult to survive. Under these circumstances, the energy storage and the sources, they're also being subjected to very heavy attrition and hit. And therefore, they are coming into the hands of Russians. That would make the life of Ukrainians very, very difficult to survive. And third and most important point you have said is that is the climatic condition or the weather going to bring about some kind of a slowing down, reducing the pace of the operation? I don't think so. This is the third and half, more than 3.5 years have passed. Whatever lessons were to be learned, either side, both the sides have learned the lessons. They have carried out amendments to their existing standing operating procedures in military deployment and offensive operations. Especially Russia. Russia has made very, very appropriate and zeroed onto those issues which had actually held it back way back in 2022 and early part of 2023 because of winter.
Yes.
And today they are better off. To me, it appears that no issue, neither the weather or the climatic condition or the kind of tomahawk threats they have been imposing will ever be able to stop Russian forces in, in, in going ahead or making headway in the advance towards the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us. We've, of course, been discussing the attacks that have been taking place, targeting energy infrastructure. Fresh reports are coming in. We're now learning that Russia's Black Sea port of Tuapse has now suspended fuel exports, while the local oil refinery has halted processing of crude oil following earlier drone attacks by Ukraine. Remember, viewers, earlier Ukraine had stated that its drone attack had struck Tuapse, causing a fire and damaging at least one tanker. Now, the regional administration had also confirmed that the strikes had caused a blaze. Ukraine has been striking Russian oil refineries, depots and pipelines, while Ukrainian energy infrastructure has been hit by Russian strikes as well. We've recently seen thousands upon thousands of families in Ukraine being left without electricity. Still with us on the broadcast is Major General Sudhakarji. This, of course, these targeted attacks come as the Trump administration has imposed sanctions on two of Russia's largest crude companies. If this persists, could this then hurt the Russian economy? And what should Russia's strategy be in that context?
Two parts in the question. Impact of the sanction on targeted companies. And will it affect or impact the Russian economy? First is the two companies which have been targeted. Between 2014 and 2022, Russia was imposed with 2,695 or more number of sanctions of different types, economic and otherwise. And from 2022, that is 24th of February 2022 till date, 26,695 or more sanctions have been imposed. So put together, it is more than 27,000 plus couple of few more which have been imposed in the recent past, about a month back. So all this put together, the Russian economy may sound like a contradiction, has actually demonstrated better performance than that of the European and the American economy. One, the rate of growth has been higher, except for the temporary phase, I would say. It has dropped to a kind of a very low performance in last quarter or so. And its export has been unaffected. And the value of ruble has actually taken a quantum jump. And I don't think Russian economy can be affected, be it in the short term or in the long term. However, the impact of targeted sanctions of these two companies, they being the largest share, holding the largest share of oil refinery and also export, will have tangible and substantive impact against Russian economy. This is my assessment. And number two, the impact of the warfare capability or the capability of defense capability of the Russia. I don't think Russia can be actually taken down in the value and the capability competence than Soviet Union way back in Second World War. Second World War of a much longer duration. They had the largest defense industry, recycling, reproduction and production machinery working that time. This time, I am given to understand from the open source, the rate of production of defense products in Russian defense industry ecosystem is 5 to 8 times more than that of all the Western alliances put together. Talk about the artillery shells or the armor shells or the missile production or the strategic bombers, name anything. This is what I have been told. Yes, these direct hits and the attrition which are being carried out with the help of drones, they are having an impact, but that impact is not so severe, not so intense that it is going to bring Russian economy and defense capability to a grinding halt.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and explaining to our viewers what exactly is transpiring on the ground, what we can expect in the coming months as well. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that the European Union has reached an agreement on its 2040 climate targets following intense negotiations in Brussels. Member states have committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 90% compared to 1990 levels. Additionally, countries will now be allowed to use international carbon credits for up to 10% of the target. The EU has also set an emissions reductions goal for 2035 ranging between 66.25 and 72.5%, which will be presented at the upcoming COP30 summit in Brazil next week. This agreement comes after concerns from some countries about the impact on domestic industries, leading to the inclusion of flexible measures. If forest or land-based CO2 absorption falls short, the EU may adjust intermediary targets or take further action as well. As Europe finalizes its plan, Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva has expressed confidence in hosting the COP30 and has proposed an Environment Council linked to the UN to monitor and enforce global climate decisions. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Desmond Majikudunmi, political and environmental activist, joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Quite the crucial meeting has taken place. An agreement has now been reached by EU countries regarding their 2040 climate targets. They want to reduce emissions by 90% of the 1990 levels. And they also want to incorporate the use of carbon credits. How significant a step is this in also not just reducing emissions, but also setting an example for the rest of the world?
It's very significant because people were extremely worried about what would happen at this particular conference that's taking place very shortly in Brazil, especially that we're having some incredible, unbelievable statements coming from the presidency of the United States, denying what over 90% of global scientists in climatology, meteorology, and geology have said about climate change, denying and even saying that they were lying. So, implying that 90% of the scientists in the world are lying about something that is so clear and obvious that we're seeing the manifestations of it all over the world. In fact, just very recently in Jamaica. So, this had brought a lot of confusion into the system. And we were very, very worried. It took a long time. These people were discussing for almost 18 hours to come to this decision. And for the European Union to stand together on this is very, very significant, even though they have reduced their ambitions in terms of the reduction. They are still going ahead and forging on with ensuring that there is a very meaningful reduction of this CO2 emissions in Europe anyway. And our hope and our prayer is that this will also help to boost the advocacy of other nations, particularly the hardest hit nations. Africa, Nigeria, where I'm calling from, is one of the most vulnerable countries to the effects of climate change. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the oceans rising unstoppably. We're talking about the ocean water being more energized. So massive incursion of the sea into the coastlines, especially the low-lying coastlines. This will affect hundreds of millions of people all over the world. Not to mention what they call now the rain bomb. That is far heavier rain falling in a short period of time, which overwhelms whatever natural, developed flood relief systems are there. Again, tens of thousands of people will be affected. Hundreds of people could die, like just happened in the Jamaica and Haiti area. Almost 100 people gone, you know, because of the heavy winds. So it's very, very encouraging, but we're going to need a lot more than this in order to ensure that we don't our climate into catastrophic consequences.
Indeed, you've spoken about a lot more that has to be done. We do know that the COP30 is taking place next week. It'll start on the Monday itself in Brazil. What are your expectations?
My expectations are actually quite high, particularly because right now, as we're talking in Brazil today, there is a wonderful initiative that has been activated by Prince William, the son of the King of the UK. It's called the Earthshot Prize, whereby over the last 5 years, they've been giving away £5 million to 5 winners of people who can come up with great initiatives, great ways of ensuring the environment is well protected. And this is appealing to the youth, to the young people of the world, whose future is being threatened by decisions that have been made over the years, over the decades, but particularly over the most recent years, that these decisions that we're making not to cut back the pollution that is causing this problem will impact very negatively on the young people's future. So for the Earthshot Prize to be holding in Brazil today, they're doing it this evening, and then they're going to have a spillover into the COP conference. It'll bring a breath sort of freshness into it. So I am optimistic. I am optimistic because, hey, you know, we love our children. We do love the children. You know, if you don't love your children, you have a major problem. And I know that the vast majority of people love their children. We love each other's children, and we want to ensure that we don't destroy the future of our children, that we don't say, okay, our legacy to our children is a cup full of poison. No, we're going to change this. I'm getting quite optimistic. And the beautiful silver lining on this very, very dark cloud, which has been brought about by our pride, by our greed, by our envy, by our desire to just, you know, satisfy the senses and just, you know, pursue purely materialistic pursuits to put profit over people. The beautiful silver lining is that we're going to make this world a much friendlier, a much more compassionate place, and we'll bring about less negative karma upon ours.
Absolutely. So with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your perspective on this very crucial development. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that an internationally coordinated operation targeting alleged online fraud and money laundering networks, including a German payment service provider, has led to 18 arrests. Germany's Federal Criminal Police and prosecutors have stated that between 2016 and 2021, alleged criminals used credit card details of 4.3 million individuals across 193 countries in their scheme, causing damages amounting to more than 300 million euros. Now, the suspects had siphoned off funds through subscriptions to fake websites designed for streaming, dating, and entertainment. The defendants compromised 4 major German payment service providers to process payments, but the firms have not, of course, been named in the report. German authorities disclosed that they had searched buildings in Germany, Italy, Canada, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Singapore, Spain, the United States, and Cyprus as well. Prosecutors stated that they are targeting 44 suspects in Germany and other countries, including members of the fraud network, payment firm employees, and crime-as-a-service providers. With us on the broadcast is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, International Affairs expert, joining us from Singapore. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. This is a transnational crime of such a magnitude that has come to light. 4.3 million individuals have been defrauded between 2016 and 2021. Money amounting to 300 million euros has been siphoned off by these criminals. What's really needed to crack down on these networks that use the cyberspace, misuse it in order to exact money for their own benefit? Because these sort of attacks don't only take place in Europe, they also take place in countries in Asia, whether it is India or China for that matter, in the United States as well. This is a global problem. So what's really needed? What sort of robust framework is needed to counter such malicious actions?
Pia, what we have seen is a transnational criminal network. And to defeat such a network, what we need is a multi-agency, multinational, and a multi-jurisdictional response. And that is what the Germans have done. So we all have to congratulate the Germans for spearheading this effort. It's a 5-year investigation involving a dozen countries, and they coordinated their actions to raid simultaneously the infrastructure of this criminal network, largely located in Western countries. Second is that the German criminal police have worked with the prosecutors. So I believe that this model of fighting crime is a very good model for other countries to emulate. That is, Germany working together with partners, striking simultaneously, dismantling a criminal network. Of course, there are hundreds of such networks, but what the Germans have done is commendable. Digital crime is a rising threat. There is physical crime, but today there is more digital crime than physical crime, and there should be capabilities built across the world where there is cooperation, collaboration, and partnership.
Indeed, sir. As you mentioned, the digital arena, it's practically a double-edged sword. It's also used for crimes such as this, but it can also be used to catch the perpetrators. I want to understand from you, how can advancements in the cybersphere, whether it's artificial intelligence or machine learning, then be incorporated by the police and other agencies in the near future in order to crack down on these criminals, basically turn their own game against them?
Most of the law enforcement authorities are trained to fight physical crime. We have to invest more and raise a new generation of young analysts, operators, specialists, and experts to work in the digital space. Most governments are challenged with education, with training, with equipment and other capabilities. So what is important for the leadership is to invest in building very smart young people who are able to outsmart these criminal organizations. And you can see that in this case, it is mostly online fraud and scams, and people who have saved their funds for entire life, they have been frauded and cheated. And surprisingly, a lot of these networks, criminal networks, are now in the Western countries. And that is why it is so important for the West to build capabilities and partnerships across the world, because the Western authorities have the best capabilities compared to countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. So we all work together to defeat this threat.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sir, sharing your insights into what can be done in order to tackle such transnational criminal incidents. Shifting focus to more news coming in, we're now learning that Belgian Prime Minister has convened an urgent security meeting after suspected drone sightings had taken place near airports and military sites. Brussels Airport is expected to resume normal operations after flight suspensions had taken place overnight. Around 80 flights were halted, leaving between 400 and 500 passengers stranded at Zaventem Airport. Flights will gradually restart throughout the day. Belgium's air traffic control agency, Skies, had stopped flights twice on Tuesday night after reports of drones near Brussels, Zaventem and Liège airports. Operations at Charleroi Airport were also temporarily suspended as a precaution. The drone incidents follow a series of unexplained sightings near airports and military sites across Europe, including in Germany and Denmark. Over the weekend, drones were also reported near Belgium's Kleinbrogel Air Base, believed to house U.S. nuclear weapons. Authorities are investigating and believe that the activity could be coordinated, designed to sow panic and disturb the country's stability. News coming in from Bosnia. We are now learning that a massive fire has ripped through a nursing home in the town of Tuzla in northern Bosnia, leaving 11 people dead and several others injured. Now, according to reports, the blaze broke out around 9 p.m. local time and was extinguished within an hour. Firefighters faced immense challenges rescuing immobile and elderly residents trapped inside. Officials say that several survivors were treated for carbon monoxide poisoning at the Tuzla University Clinical Center. Drones and ground footage show extensive damage to the buildings. Authorities, meanwhile, are investigating the cause of the fire as the community mourns this devastating tragedy. Listen in to what the deputy commander of the firefighters and what a resident had to say.
Ovako, dojava je krenula od 20:45, dobili smo informaciju da gori objekat, dom penzionera kojim su smještena starija iznemogla lica. Na lice mjesta su krenule prve dvije ekipe, vidjeli su da je požar se nalazi na posljednjem spratu, započeli su spašavanje, gašenje, ubrzo su pristigle i ostale ekipe naše. Znači, ukupno na požaru je bilo 6 naših vatrogasnih vozila, ubrzo se priključila i dobrovoljno društvo Tuzla. Situacija je bila jako teška, jer ovo su jako, što kažu, kritični i teški požari gdje se radi o nepokretnim, slabo pokretnim licima, kao i to da se vrši paralelno i evakuacija i spašavanje.
Ne znam koliko je bilo vatrogasaca, koliko je bilo policije, samo sam vidio ogroman plamen, dim, stare, te bespomoćne. Bili su na polju, vani, nemam riječi, stvarno nemam riječi.
With that, viewers, it's a wrap on NewsX Eurozone. We will continue to track these updates very, very closely. Stay tuned for more such updates.